So bear with me. I'm excited that I have a little bit more time, even though I don't mind doing my civic duty, of course, but I'm glad that I have this time because I can squeeze in some of the things I had to take off the list. And coming to talk to you on the lazy overachiever was pretty important, especially considering I had a wonderful conversation with a good friend that I sit on one of her boards. And we were just kind of having a catch up before the end of the year, holiday season, like all that stuff. Because this, it's December. This is the time where the business development is done differently. It's in my lane, deeper connections, really getting to know people, following up with them, not just in business matters, but like, how are you? Like, literally, not just, oh, I'm fine, all is well considering. Okay. And in parentheses, what does that mean to you? How are you doing? How's your family? How's your dog, your cat, your frog, your fish, and everything else, especially if I hadn't had an opportunity to, really just hold space for the people who matter to me in my life. And I mean that both personally and professionally. So with that said, one of the conversations we were having the other day, just, it was relevant to what we were talking about, but potentially considered random by other people, was really this discipline that we often have to have if you consider yourself a Leo or an IO. So I'm a Leo by, the nature of my birthday, July 28th. But when I say Leo, I mean LIO, which is a lazy, innovative overachiever. When I say lazy, I don't mean it in the Webster's dictionary version of the world, although, fun fact, Webster is my middle name. So I kind of feel like I have the right and privilege to redefine words to fit me in whichever way I want, especially when it's for a positive reason, not to redefine something, to be negative or any of that. But that being said, as a lazy, innovative overachiever, I really do focus on embracing rest, white space, joy, creating the joy, the pockets of joy wherever I can have them bloom in bigger ways. 2 minutes here, 20 minutes here, 6 weeks there, it's all good. But sometimes you just want to make sure that you have those anchors on your calendar and they're squeezed in a very rhythmic way. So you don't get too booked and busy and forget about you in the process of serving other people, which you love to do, you're good at doing, all of that. Especially if you identify as even an IO, even if you're not ready for the lazy part, because even though I've defined it as someone who really just understands that embracing rest is something that should be part of a priority for you because you matter. But getting off my soapbox, coming back to the point, as an innovative overachiever for that portion, being impact driven, high performing, your portfolio backwards and forwards speaks for itself in whichever way you show up in the world and have, even if you've evolved and you've changed careers or pathways in which you have inspired the people around you or created imprints is what I like to call them. Some people say legacy. I say multi-generational imprints because I want it to be bigger than me, bigger than my own personal timeline and go on and on and on. With that being said, it's obviously hard for you to be lazy in the traditional sense of the word if you're also a innovative overachiever, right? Like the two are, they don't go well together. It's kind of a juxtaposition of sorts, which is also why I like to be tongue in cheek with it and play on the word a little bit because like I am lazy from the perspective of I'm not feeling guilty when I wiggle my toes and I sit back and I want to watch a Netflix show with my husband or whatever it is that I want to do in the world or read a magazine or just sit and stare and be. And it's not about meditation. It's not about doing my deep breathing, even though all those things are great, but just to be. I don't feel like I need to do something to feel restful. And a lot of that takes practice and time to sit with yourself. In that, there's another discipline that comes with being an overachiever, period. Even if you're not necessarily super innovative and you're not always, I am for lack of a better, an activator, an architect in many ways where I'm constantly creating things, solutions to new problems is what I say is my creative gift because I can't draw, can't sing, can't dance from the traditional, definition of that. Although I have a lot of fun trying. I don't know if my family loves me jumping around the house every day singing. It's a whole thing. It's not my gift, but it's a whole thing. And with that, often you can come into this space and place where you're in your life and you just want to do something fun that's quirky and awkward and different. And sometimes you need restful moments from that too, because even if you're not creating and designing solutions to problems all the time or whatever it is, even if that's not what you do for work, but maybe that's what you do for fun, maybe it's just a natural pull for you to do in some form or fashion, you can get exhausted. Your mind is constantly going. And the clinical social worker, trauma specialist in me would say, okay, we need to be mindful of anxiety and some of the other things that could be going on, whether it's situational, whether it's because of the season you're in, whether it's because you're a human at a certain stage in life where your hormones are playing games with you because they think it's cute and it's not. But whatever it is that's happening in your life at the time, knowing that rest is important and it's crucial and it's strengthening and it's supportive in so many ways, I prioritize it, which is why I stake the claim 10 toes down and I'm lazy. I don't need to apologize for it. I know people say, oh, that's not lazy. It's me. It's me saying I'm lazy. I claim it. I don't need to reframe it any other kind of way. It's not a negative for me in any way, shape, or form when I'm saying it to me, for me, about me. And if somebody else is calling me lazy, I'm just like, Google me, boo, period. But for me, I know what it means in all the ways. What came up in my conversation with my good girlfriend was how when you are an IO or a Leo, a full Leo, if you embrace the lazy portion, there's a discipline that we often don't even realize is something that we've had to become really good at being and doing simultaneously. And that discipline is learning to be quiet. When you are a multi-hyphenated, multi-mastered expert, and I mean this, I don't mean this in an arrogant way. I don't mean this just because you have a bunch of degrees or certifications or licensings, and all of those things can matter too. And I have them. So, yay me. Um, but I don't even mean it that way. Just like you can teach yourself many, many things that you become really, really good at to the level of master in that thing. I don't think you ever become a master of you in the way that we would love to be because we're beautifully evolving all the time and we're constantly arriving at different points of ourselves in time and space and the dimension that we're in it in that time in our life. You know, the 20-some version of me is very different than the 40-some version of me. And the 40-some version of me that's nearing 50 is very different than the me 6 months ago, right? Like just being really honest with that. So mastering me in a very technical sense is not something I even aspire to do. I do want to always have a PhD in me, and I'm always researching, I'm always learning, I'm always willing to test and try. And, you know, I have this saying in my house and amongst my inner circle where I'm always in beta. I'm always in beta. I want to play and experience and figure things out. And sometimes it's not just imperfect, it's messy. It's like sloppy. But I enjoy the process because the process is what's creating memories for me. The process is what allows me to be humble and to be anchored in things that are so much more important than maybe some of the what I'll call first world problems that I might be having or thinking are all consuming in that particular hour of my life. And the discipline that you have to have when you have, you know, you're very experienced as, for some of you out there that are listening right now, maybe you're very experienced as a mathematician. You're also very experienced in building shelves, you know, like what is that called? Woodworking, carpentry. And whether it's a professional skill like that you went to school or trade or you paid someone else to teach you to do in a very serious, detailed way, or it's something that you self-taught, because I believe you can be self-taught in many, many things. I still also believe that every coach should have a coach, every teacher should be taught, every trainer should be trained, and every therapist should have therapy at some point in their life. So yes, to all those things. And in parentheses, there are still many, many skills and trades that you can teach yourself and become super excellent in. The challenge is when you are one of those multi-mastered humans, maybe even multi-hyphenated in the traditional self with the degrees and certifications and yada, yada, ABC, XYZ. It's hard to be quiet when you are in a position at, let's just say, one of your hats, one of your expertise hats. Maybe you're a marketing expert at an organization, or as a founder and entrepreneur in whichever way you are, your organization or company, maybe your consulting expertise is marketing, but you're in a room and someone is discussing, or some peoples are discussing problems where your other expertise hat is actually relevant, but that's not what you're there for. That's not what you're paid for. Even if you take money off the table, because maybe it's not a professional thing, maybe it's a personal thing. You're talking to some family members or just friends holding space for them. The way I usually do this time of year, where I'm just holding space. Hey, girl, what's going on? What's up, homie? Like whatever the case is. Sometimes it's really hard to not open up your mouth and speak through that lens of expertise and knowledge and research that you've done, and trial and error, especially if you're someone like me that's lived in beta long enough, like not a year, not a month, like decades and decades of living in beta in whichever areas that you wanted to play in or perfect, depending on where you were. Because I'm a reformed perfectionist. I'm very reformed in that. I catch myself whenever it's trying to pop up, and I have some guardrails around that we can talk about at another time if any of you are interested in learning some of those. But that said, it's hard to be quiet because you want to give. And most overachievers, whether you're a full Leo or an IO or just an O, and you are brave enough and bold enough to identify, not in a negative way, because I know overachieving can be seen as negative, but I really don't see it as a negative. I see it as you leaning into the fact that you are not just highly ambitious, as in aspiring to do things, you get a lot of things done. You're highly accomplished. And that's not necessarily a bad thing unless you are leaning so heavy into that to avoid the other areas of your life that also need attention, the other people in your life that also need attention. And there are humans out there. I was one that lived in that season where everything was as much about work as it could be about work, considering that I was a parent and a wife. And considering that I couldn't give 100% to those things because I had to have energy for the logistics of whatever it was that I was supposed to do with my family at that time. But it still was really easy to, be changing a diaper and be calculating, okay, did I fax that? I'm dating myself a little bit when I say that, but because my kids are grown now and I'm a grandparent now, right? So I'm going back a little bit when I say fax. But, did I fax that? Did I send that? Oh, yeah, I have to make sure I put the folder in the drawer or file that correctly, whatever it is. While you're changing a diaper, while you're singing, ABCs and doing the zoo while you're feeding the baby or whatever the case is, that you're still not fully present in that moment, even though logistically you're handling what needed to be handled in that moment as well. And, sometimes that is what it is. So I'm not judging the version of me that dealt with it. I'm just aware that that wasn't always the best way to do it. And it wasn't always the best version of me. And there should have been, for me, a better balance, pun intended, as a balance and relationship advisor at that time. That's just what it is and what it should have been for me. With hindsight, with maturity, with therapy, with coaching, with mentoring, with having some people sit at my personal and professional advisory table, I can say with pride, that's no longer an issue that I have. And I still don't judge the previous version of myself for it. It just was what it was in that season. And if I had known then what I know now, I would have worked more diligently to be more present and to not have to lean so heavy into the accomplishment bucket, not dishonoring my ambition, not ignoring the fact that I have a right to be. And I love the fact that I'm an ambitious human to the point that I can qualify myself as an overachiever. And I'm proud of that. I'm not feeling like I need to apologize to anyone, including myself, which is the most important human in the room about that, I see it as a positive that needs to stay in check. It's like you can have too much water or put your whole body out of balance. You can do too much achieving, right? Like, especially when things are not balanced in, whichever way it needs to be for you. And then the being quiet in the room can be really, really hard, but it's a discipline that I think is worth investigating, if nothing else. 'Cause I'm trying to be mindful and careful that some people love being the go-to for everything and all the topics. What I found over time is you start to only be seen that way as the know-it-all in the room, not necessarily even in a bad way, just kinda like, "Oh, Nikita knows this, Tiffany knows that, Don knows that, David knows this," right? Like, we go to these people for these things. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could start to feel lonely when you're always that person, because when you're that person, who do you go to when you have a question? And I don't just mean it in the specific logistical way of like, oh, well, you should have all these other people have expertise too, and they can add value to you. Of course they can. But when you're seen a certain way, when you're seen as the strong one all the time, the person that always has the answer or a direction or a give in some way, some people program themselves, and I'm not saying this is negative or bad, it just is, and it always doesn't feel good. But some people program themselves to extract from you, and they don't have any space to hold for you because they honestly don't think you need it. And I want you to sit with that for a minute. When you have friends, colleagues, peers, other subject matter experts in your circle that consider themselves what I call pro friends, like professional friends, you vibe, you're really, really cool, but you're not necessarily on each other's like most intimate list of an event that you're having personally in your life. Or if you get sick, if they happen to call, you might share, but you're not necessarily saying to your loved ones, like, hey, make sure those people know. So I call them pro friends. Um, it's a good thing. They're just not in your deepest part of your friendship circle, right? And we all have them, so it's not a judgment of their character or anything. But when you have those people with all these other expertise areas and you find yourself in a stuck place, but you have allowed yourself to be the constant faucet for everyone because you feel good. You do it for a reason. Let's be clear. It's not because people are just jamming you on without your permission. And if that's happening, that's a whole different topic that we need to talk about. But aside from that, it's typically you turned it on because you feel good. Your oxytocin is boosted, your cortisol is lower, like your endorphins are going because you're giving, and if you're giving from a place of expertise and excellence, you're kind of excited about giving. But when the faucet is constantly on, even though the well will not run dry, because if you believe like I believe, then you stand in knowing that you are an open source of creativity because your downloads don't come just from you, right? Like it's constantly coming in and pouring in. I don't believe you'll dry up or run out of ideas or your excellence will, for some reason, no longer matter. I don't believe any of that to be true. But it can be exhausting, that if you've ever run a sink for a really, really long time, the water starts to sound different when it's on long. Sometimes you'll even see like gapes in how it's coming in if you stare at the stream of how it's coming, how it's pouring out, whether it's full stream or a little drip. But it starts to sound different. The pipes start to whistle in a different way. They tired. They turn me off. Let me get a moment. Let me catch up. Right. And sometimes we're not giving ourselves a moment and we don't have anyone to have that moment with. And that's real. And I'm not saying this if you're, single versus in a relationship or any of that. I don't even mean it that way because I love, 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 love my husband's bathwater. Okay. Like love, love, love. There are just still things that I'd rather have conversations with. And he is he is the ultimate best friend for me. Outside of God, it's my husband as my best friend, second to me, myself. And then I have female best friends as well that I've known since I was a teenager. there's still things I don't want to necessarily talk about with him. Not because I can't, not because I don't feel safe, not because he won't understand. There's a relatability factor that's just different. If I'm talking about my menopause, like, yeah, he's hearing me and he doesn't relate, but he understands that his wife is not her best self in that moment and doesn't feel her best self in that moment. So it's not a safety issue. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, you can be in relationship or you can not be in relationship. I just mean this from the perspective of when you're always pouring out and giving, but you don't have anyone that can be the giver to you because you're constantly almost interrupting them with your giving when they're trying to hold space for you. And sometimes that happens too. You have to be really, really careful. And this is a default for almost every single person that I would qualify as an overachiever that I've ever run into. They are consummate givers. First partaker over here. First one. And it's really, really challenging. But it is an intentional discipline that I encourage you to consider, if nothing else, working on as you leave 2025 and you enter into 2026. Because you want to be able to have people you can call when you need space held, and not in like a quick, yeah, of course people say, well, how are you too? But you can tell when people don't really care or they don't really have the space for it. They're expecting you to give the tropey answer of, oh, I'm good. Child, just, what we going to do in America, right? Like, what we going to do in this part of the world? Like, it is what it is. And just have these like place card statements that you say, but there's no room for actual dialogue. And it's not because they don't want to give it to you. They're not used to it. You have trained them to receive from you and not to reciprocate in a more bountiful way. So I encourage you, just consider whether you embrace fully the identity of the lazy, innovative overachiever as Leo, or just IO, or just O, or you're just an ambitious human that can relate to a portion of what I said and you don't identify any of the like labels that I've mentioned out. Just consider testing it. Be in beta with this one a little bit. The next time you're professionally in a room, which is probably the harder but more metric space, where you can kind of qualify it and quantify it to kind of test it out. If you're paid to be in a room to do A, even though you know B, C, D, E, F, and those people or person that's in the room that's kind of bringing up the problem, the challenge, and they're highlighting all the things, and you could absolutely put on that other hat, or two or three or four. Pause. Just swallow. Count to 5. Listen. Actively listen to them, but do not interrupt with giving in that area that technically you're not paid to do. In the beginning, maybe you could just say, you have some really good challenges or good questions around that I consider you talking to a person in X field about. Even if they know that you also have worn that hat before or still wear it, and they want to ask you, like, you know what, we would have to, I want to be able to help you with this, but we would have to renegotiate our scope of work, because that's something that's another layer of my expertise. And I want to make sure that everything is covered if that's an area that you want me to go into as well. Right. Or some version of that, whatever makes you feel comfortable based on your relationship and your contract and whatever. It's probably the easiest place to do it. In your your personal relationships, try just being quiet. Honestly, let them talk and, obviously in an active listening way, engage with, I hear you. Wow. Okay. All right. And if you're a spiritual person, I'll hold some positive intentions around that for you. I will pray for you, whatever is that feels good for you and your spirit around it, honestly. And I'm not saying put these as other place cards. I mean what you say when you say it. But just because you're trying to like not give doesn't mean that you just freeze and you don't show up as a human for them in that way, because you don't know what to do now that you're locked in your body with this other version of you trying to calm yourself and give yourself permission to pause and just allow yourself to retrain your relationship in a different way. It's not really training the person in this instance, it's retraining what the relationship expectation has become for both parties involved. You are used to it and have benefited in many, many ways from it, like I said, as well as they have. And most of the people that you're talking to will absolutely love the opportunity to give back. There will be some. There will be some that absolutely are annoyed, frustrated, confused, um, angry, even of how dare you like not be this person for me. I've always been able to call you, ask you, ping you, WhatsApp you, single app you, whatever questions I have, and now you're pulling back. And, I always say you give people long enough to tell on themselves, so let them tell on themselves. Everybody's going to be a little awkward in the beginning, including you, especially you. But try. Just be in beta with this one a little bit. Because again, as a multi-hyphenated, multi-mastered expert in whichever ways that you are, and an innovative overachiever, constantly creating new, innovative, beautiful, wonderful things, you got to be mindful that it's the intimacy that's fueling the innovation, the intimacy with yourself, the intimacy with your higher self, your higher power, whatever, whoever that is for you, the intimacy in the relationships. That fuels the innovation. And if you're not in connection, deepening the connection in a reciprocal way where it's not all you giving and someone else receiving, it's going to be really, really hard for you to be at the highest version of your innovative, overachieving self if you identify with that. That's where I wanted to leave you. So until next time, I want you to consider the lazy parts a little bit more by resting a little bit more and rebelling a little bit more, quite honestly, but trusting your inner brilliance a whole lot. And that inner brilliance is your intuition. So just trust it. I'm Dr. Naketa Ren Thigpen, and I look forward to the next The Lazy Overachiever opportunity with you. Talk soon.